It has been 2 years since the last Fate Stay Night movie hit theaters in America, and now that Heaven's Feel 2 is finally here, it's a one-day-only event. But luckily, because I am absolute weeaboo trash, I bought tickets a month in advance. In preparation for this movie, I rewatched the first Heaven's Feel, and the video that I made on it. And other than needing a pop filter, there's nothing that I would change about that review. The first movie has a great setup, and it lays a solid foundation for the next one. But does Heaven's Feel 2 build on that foundation? Well, let's talk about that. I saw Heaven's Feel in a theater by Fenway Stadium. Knowing that parking would be impossible, I found a parking garage that would charge me $15 for anything past 2.5 hours, which was much better than the $28 that it would charge me for anything past 18 hours. Knowing that this movie was going to be 2 hours long and we'd probably be spending an extra 2 hours in the city, it seemed like a good deal at the time. So we get in the theater, and neither of us have eaten. So out of starvation, I fork over the $25 to pay for 2 sodas and a popcorn. And that's 2 medium sodas, which were actually pretty large, but you know, that's America for you. Okay, it's fine. We were both hungry, and even though that's still robbery for 1 popcorn and 2 sodas, we still devoured it. Now we're in the theater and the movie starts, and already Heaven's Feel 2 is at a huge advantage. There's a little bit of skipping straight to the action early on, but nothing as bad as the first movie skipping over whole portions because they were animated in unlimited blade work. For you lolicons out there, rejoice, because you'll be happy to know that Heaven's Feel 2 includes a lot more of Ilya. For normal people like me and hopefully you'll be happy to know that her scenes will only make you feel slightly uncomfortable. Heaven's Feel 2 focuses a lot more on the romance between Shiro and Sakura than anything else, because if this story is going to have the payoff that it does in the visual novel, they need to sell you on this relationship. And that's not to say that Rin and Archer don't get their moments. In fact, Archer has some of the best scenes in this movie, at least best scenes in Fate that aren't in Unlimited Blade Works. And for those of you that are worried about missing the cooking, don't worry, it's in here. But it's cut down to 2 scenes, and one of them might be the funniest thing in the whole movie. And it was exactly at this scene that my friend nudges me and points to the ground. Because here in this Boston theater, right next to the home of the Red Sox, is a small, little mouse, just running back and forth through the aisles. As my friend begins to throw popcorn at the mouse, the greatest fight scene, in fact, one of the few fight scenes in the movie, but still the greatest fight scene in anime history happens. Saber versus Berserker will be on a million top 10 anime fights after this comes out, and likely won't be dethroned until the 3rd Heaven's Feel movie. They went all out on this scene and this middle portion of the movie, to be completely honest, because they knew that they couldn't end on a huge action scene, since the 3rd movie was going to basically be that. This is also Saber Alter's official entrance into the story. There's a little bit of a hinting around, and you see her a little bit, but this is where she actually does something that matters, and man does it work. Absolutely, this fight is the highlight of the film. And what made this scene much more intense was that I was halfway through my soda, and I had to piss at the start of the scene, and I had to wait for probably 20 minutes, maybe more, until there was another slow scene where I could safely run out of my seat, make sure not to step on the mouse, go to the bathroom, run back, and not miss anything important. And it's a good thing that I went when I did, because as I sit back down, things are about to get steamy with Shiro and Sakura. In case you were wondering, Heaven's Feel is the first in the Fate series to faithfully adapt an H scene, and it was fucking nasty. Not really. It was tastefully done, and it made sense in the context of the film. It didn't feel like a porn scene hastily added in post, which ironically was what most H scenes feel like in the original visual novel. This felt completely appropriate for an R-rated movie that would have been in live action. The horror and gore is played up too. Heaven's Feel is the route with the most bad endings after all. If you went into this movie expecting happy times on the Shiro Express, I got some bad news for you, buddy. There's a couple things thematically moved around that work better for this 3-act structure. The visual novel has the player make the choice for Shiro to give up on his ideal of being a hero of justice to save Sakura. And that happens relatively early into the route. Not exactly at the beginning, but not really towards the end. You know, something like, the middle? While that still happens here, we don't really see or understand the implications of that until the end of this movie. And I'm happy to say that these films are able to carry over the thematic elements of Fate's Stay Night, and not just the visual and surface level stuff. I mean, after all, this is a waifu harem game. The film ends on a cliffhanger similar to the first movie, except instead of Spider-Man 3, this is The Dark Phoenix. If you've seen the movie and read comic books, that will make sense to you. If you haven't seen the movie or if you haven't read comic books, I'm sorry, that's as much of a reference as I'll give. And now with both movies behind us, I don't think there's any way that this third movie could fail. All that's left to cover is the climax of this route and of the visual novel as a whole. Heaven's Feel has one of the best endings in visual novels, period. And seeing how well they animated the Berserker fight, I'm not worried in the slightest. Once more taking careful steps to avoid the mouse, we left the theater, noticed a strange blood splatter in the bathroom, and then went back to the garage. It had indeed been about 4 hours. Well under the 18 hours that would charge me extra. So, when I go to pay my ticket, what do I see? $28 owed. Because of course, Boston would charge that much to go see a movie in a bloody mouse-filled theater. In total, I ended up paying about $73 to go see this movie in Boston for its one-night showing. And do I regret it? Of course not, because I am a huge Fate fan, but it's becoming harder and harder to say that. Mainly because if I say that I like Fate's Stay Night, I have to explain why I like this and not this. Or why I like this and not this. The franchise has grown beyond my ability to keep up with it. And sometimes I forget how long I've been into this franchise. I can remember when all that Fate was a fantastic fan-translated visual novel, a shitty anime, and a mediocre manga. Now there's so much Fate out there that you could actually spend the rest of your life just trying to absorb as much Fate as you can, and probably still die before you get around to everything. But Heaven's Feel brings me back to a time when Fate was much smaller than what it is now, when it was just me on my laptop clicking away, page after page, waiting to see what would happen next. Whenever a third movie comes out, that'll probably be it for me. Everything that I care about in the Fate franchise will have been adapted into an anime. I was with Fate. Then they changed what Fate was. And now what Fate is weird and fetishy to me. But hit me up when UFO Table decides to adapt Tsukihime.